All right, let's get started on this
Eugene, you are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal morality statute.
What? Wait, what? I can't say
Eugene, you are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal
What about
Eugene, you are fined 1 credit for a violation
What about
of the verbal morality statute. Eugene,
mother
Eugene, you are fined 1 Eugene, you are
son of a
Eugene, you are fined 1 credit for a
What
violation.
the
Eugene,
How the am I supposed to get through this video if you can't even let me go my way and do this son of a God. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Eugene Reviews. And today, for the first time, I'm going to actually review a movie that I've never seen before. And that movie is 1993's dystopian action thriller known as Demolition Man. I'm probably gonna have that repeated. Demolition Man. So my history on viewing this film, I saw this a few days ago. My friend, he knows who he is, recommended me that I watch this film. It's a late 80s, early 90s action flick. Around this time, we've had Die Hard films, we've had Rambo films, we've had Terminator films. So this is kind of the comeuppance of all of these great action, thrilling set pieces. And Demolition Man happens to be one of the more notable, more recognized of these senseless action films. And this film has an array of star-studded casts such as Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, Sandra Bullock, Rob Schneider, and Dennis Leary. And surprisingly, as an avid film fan such as myself, I have never seen this movie before. And trust me, I've gotten chastised day in and day out by a bunch of people, including one particular person, that I haven't seen this film and that I call myself a film fanatic. Well, finally got to see it, and now let's go through these 3 acts and let's showcase what this film's all about. Act 1, development. Demolition Man, take 1. So Demolition Man was released in October of 1993, and it was produced by Joel Silver and Howard Kazanjian. I apologize if I botched that name. And I know you guys are wondering who are these two. Well, if you know action films, these are the names that you have to think about in regards to producers. Joel Silver produced the Lethal Weapon franchise, the Die Hard franchise, the Matrix franchise, the Sherlock Holmes franchise. And the flip side of that coin, you've got Howard, who's produced Raiders of the Lost Ark, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. So already, on paper, this movie screams action bonanza, action masterpiece. And just when you thought it couldn't be any more outrageous, you've got Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, 2 guys at kind of the high points of their careers. Stallone coming off Rambo and Rocky, Wesley Snipes, Passenger 57, White Men Can't Jump, and not to mention you already have Sandra Bullock on this film. So the cast of this is already top notch. Demolition Man is kind of loosely based, not entirely based, but loosely based on the 1932 novel by Aldous Huxley known as Brave New World. The film's plot and the novel's plot are kind of one and the same, in which they deal with this futuristic scientific revolution in which there are new reproductive technologies and manipulative psychological advancements that create for this dystopian future. And the protagonist, Sylvester Stallone's character, John Spartan, is the only one against it. Fun fact, Sandra Bullock's character, whose last name also is Huxley, is an homage to the author of Brave New World. So the homage to Huxley, the basing on Brave New World, the star-studded powerhouse cast that they got, as well as the producers behind it, are a bunch of things to consider when you think about the development of Demolition Man. Now let's go ahead and go into Act 2. Act 2, execution. Demolition Man, take 1. So the film kind of plays out how you would play out any typical action film. Good guy catches bad guy gets away, good guy and bad guy get cryogenically frozen, and then we're in this distant future, and both good guy and bad guy are unfrozen, and they wreak hell upon whatever city they're in, and yeah, that's typically it. So John Spartan is played by Sylvester Stallone. John Spartan is this take no prisoners type of hell hath no fury, like John Scorned, explosion, destruction, chaos type of cop. And then on the other side, you've got Simon Phoenix, his arch nemesis, this criminal, delusional, bizarre, and just wildly filled with antics, and it's played by Wesley Snipes. It's 1996, and hell just breaks loose to a point where both of them are condemned to be cryogenically frozen. And then you fast forward 36 years later in the year 2032, and Simon Phoenix, he wreaks havoc in San Angeles, the new kind of San Bernardino, Los Angeles, tri-state area type of city in 2032. What's crazy about this city is there are no crimes committed whatsoever. It's a crime-free city. Can you believe that? And when Simon Phoenix is accidentally unfrozen, he wreaks havoc upon a city that no one knows how to take care of, unless you're John Spartan. They unfreeze John Spartan. John Spartan goes back to his old ways, and you kind of see the unraveling of this world, and you see really this nice futuristic city crumble, and you see the real secret behind why this city is the way it is. And also you see Edward Friendly, played by Dennis Leary, who's kind of the leader of this underground cult of the lower class, poor class of civilization that was like shunned to the underground after the earthquakes of 2010. So there's a lot this film dives into in regards to the future and in regards to social class, which is really cool. And of course, this plays out as a typical 90s film. Taco Bell is the #1 restaurant in the city. Anything and everything that's a restaurant is a Taco Bell. You've got futuristic fonts, because that's typical 90s. The HUNKA-CHUNKA. I don't even know what the HUNKA-CHUNKA is. Everything plays out futuristic. It's very, very satirical. It's very parody-like. It's funny. It's funny just to see kind of this city unfold and see how they really react to a true crime that takes place in the future. They're not trained to handle this type of chaos in this time. So it's really nice to see that kind of come into play. You see the futuristic aspects of vehicles, buildings, way of life, culture, everything. I really like thoroughly how the city was thought out. Of course, you can't mention this film without mentioning the performances from Stallone, from Snipes, even from Sandra Bullock. All three of them had great performances. Stallone is being Stallone. Sandra Bullock, I like her kind of preppiness, her bubbly attitude, and also her knack for wanting to be a part of the action since there's no crime involved. She really does a good job with that character. But I think the act that steals the show is Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes could physically play the role. He was mentally like coming out of his shell in that role. It was really, really interesting to see him play that kind of freaky and psychologically unstable type of character. It also got me thinking, yo, in the 90s, he would have made a good Joker. He really could have. He can physically play the role. He's got a voice that he could play around with. He's got what it takes. He's got the chops for it. And who's gonna deny Wesley Snipes? Honestly, if you did in front of his face, he's gonna kick your ass. I like too kind of the subtle influence this film had become. I'll get to that in Act 3, but it had a lot of influence and a bunch of pop culture stuff that include film, even sports. The film is cheesy at times, I'll say that, but it's still a good film. I think the concept and the overall vision of this is really smart. And for them to kind of play it like a parody as well was also a smart move. It didn't take itself seriously, and I don't think it should have taken itself seriously, because if it did, I think it was just going to be a train wreck. But to see it kind of all unfold, to see really Stallone and Snipes wreak havoc in this new future and kind of everyone react to it was pretty fun. Overall, I like the balance between the film's concept of action and its thematic elements and plots of a dystopian future. It really was well played out. Overall, it's a nice film. I think in some way, Demolition Man is an underrated action film in the 90s. When you've got films like Terminator, Rambo, Commando, True Lies, Die Hard, when you have all of the plethora of action films that came out either before or after, somewhere in the middle is Demolition Man, and I think it should be recognized a little bit more than a bunch of these other films. So the action's on point, the dystopian future that's highlighted and kind of based off its novel source, the performances from Stallone, Bullock, as well as Wesley Snipes, and just the overall fact that it's having fun with it. It's being loose, it's not being too serious, is what makes Demolition Man such a memorable action film, a memorable 90s film, a memorable film overall. Act 3, response, Demolition Man, take 1. As I mentioned, Demolition Man is one of the more recognizable action films of the 90s. And rightfully so. This was Austin Powers before Austin Powers. This was dealing with cryogenically frozen protagonists and antagonists before it was cool. This was Parasite and Snowpiercer before Parasite and Snowpiercer, in which it highlighted the real power struggle of social classes, the rich and the poor. And you know the most innovative part is, if it wasn't for this movie, you wouldn't have seen Dennis Rodman with the hair that he had in the 90s. That's right. Simon Phoenix was responsible for Dennis Rodman's haircut just before he played with the Spurs. His hair, he cut his hair to look just like Simon Phoenix, and the rest is history. They mentioned Arnold being president, and they were actually kind of close to it. Arnold actually became a governor for California many years after the film was released, and was almost kind of an homage to Demolition Man. I don't know if it was purposely, but that's crazy to think. Arnold became a governor when he was highlighted as a president in Demolition Man. If I'm not mistaken, they tried to do the Arnold amendment, but they immediately scrapped it. So the legacy of this film is intact. There's a following to it. People still recognize Demolition Man in the 90s. You've had other films kind of resemble the same plot. It's a noteworthy action film of the 90s, and of course, Dennis Rodman changed his hair to look like Simon Phoenix. I'm really kind of getting behind this whole Simon Phoenix, Dennis Rodman thing. And of course it had to have a great legacy, because I wouldn't have thought about watching this film had it not been for such a great legacy. All right, that being said, let's go ahead and hit my verdict. My verdict for Demolition Man is, it's well thought out. It's playful, it's satirical, it's parody-like, it's action-packed, and it's really well balanced if you don't take it very seriously. This isn't supposed to be some type of Oscar-nominated for your consideration type of film. It's a fun, loose action film that has its top stars being top stars. You've got Stallone being Stallone. You've got Snipes being a amped up version of Snipes. You've got an up-and-coming Sandra Bullock really kind of hitting the head on her role. You've got this futuristic Los Angeles setting. You've got this cool concept of good guy chases bad guy in the future. And because of that, you've got other films kind of mirroring their plots, their themes. Because of that, you see pop culture icons imitating some of their characters. You see some futuristic plots come into play in the actual real life future. And in essence of all the action film bonanzas from the late 80s, early 90s, this film, though underrated, is still recognizable and is still revered as one of the more important films of the 90s. I'm gonna give Demolition Man an 8.6 out of 10. There you have it, Demolition Man. It took me 27 years to finally watch this film, and now I can finally say it's off my list. I do not have to watch Demolition Man. I'll watch it again, but as far as viewing it for the first time, done it. Now, there are other films that I still need to watch that I've never seen before, and there are a lot of noteworthy films I haven't seen. If you'd like, you could leave a comment and see what films I haven't reviewed yet that you'd like for me to review that I could possibly do immediately since they're noteworthy films. Leave them in the comments. Also, like, share, subscribe, view my other videos and my other reviews as well if you've gotten a chance. And thank y'all again for the support. I really love doing this. I really love getting a chance to examine these films and watch these new films, as you can see. And I can't wait for the upcoming future and what lies ahead in regards to what type of films I'm going to be reviewing. Till then, everybody stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands, and we will get back to our normal lives, hopefully sooner rather than later. And that is a wrap. You know what? You can kiss my